Yo, what's going on, guys? Patrick here, back today with another video. And in today's video, I want to talk about the KeyStep Pro. More specifically, how I set this keyboard up to work in Logic Pro and take full advantage of the 4 separate polyphonic tracks. Now, while I am really excited about the emphasis on performance that Arturia have placed on this controller, I've also been really curious to explore how the KeyStep Pro integrates into more of a music production workflow. So for the time being, I've been running this little hybrid setup using the Roland JU-06A boutique synthesizer and some plug-in instruments in Logic. I also recently received the Microfreak synth and Drumbrute Impact drum synth from Arturia. I'm definitely still getting to know these pieces of gear, but they have quickly found their way into my little setup. I also run these in combination with some software instruments in Logic. Assigning, of course, a different instrument to each one of the polyphonic tracks on the KeyStep Pro, and then being able to switch between each one of the tracks without having to take my hands off of the KeyStep Pro. This is fairly simple to set up, but at the same time, if you're new to sequencer controllers and sequencing gear like I was, I think you'll find it's a little bit complicated your first time. Not to worry though, I'm gonna walk you through the whole process and then I'll show you how to save this setup as a template so you can pull it up anytime you open Logic Pro. But let's get started with this setup and hop into Logic Pro. Okay, I want to show you how to set this up a couple of different ways. The first way is using all software instruments. And then in the second setup, I'll show you how to integrate your outboard synths, modular drum machines, stuff like that. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is go into Logic and open an empty project. So we're going to start with 4 software instruments. Now the first thing that you want to do is you want to go to your record settings. Come down here to recording settings, and you want to make sure that this box is checked. Auto demix by channel if multi-track recording. That's a MIDI setting. You'll find it under the recording tab and under the MIDI section of this tab. Once you have that clicked, you can close out of that window. Next, we need to take each of our software instruments and set them to a different MIDI channel. And you want to come over here to where it says MIDI channel. Just in the name of simplicity, we will set instrument 1 to MIDI channel 1, instrument 2 to MIDI channel 2, 3 to MIDI channel 3, and 4 to, you guessed it, MIDI channel 4. Okay, so next, you can plug in your KeyStep Pro, turn it on, and the first thing you need to do is open the MIDI Control Center app. If you don't have this downloaded, I'll put a link in the description below to Arturia's website where you can download this app. First, you always want to make sure that you have the latest up-to-date firmware. Download the latest firmware off the website, and over here where it says firmware revision, you just click on this little button, you click upgrade, and then you select the firmware that you downloaded to upgrade the controller's firmware. Over here in this section that says MIDI channel, you're just going to want to make sure that all of your tracks are separated by different MIDI channels. You can set these to whatever channel you want. Just make sure you remember the numbers because they're going to correspond to the setup in Logic Pro. So once you're done, you can close that window out. Now the fun part comes, we can start setting up our tracks. Now the first track is the only track that can operate either as a sequencer track or as a drum track. The other 3 are either sequencer or arpeggiator tracks. So feel free to set this up however you want, but just make a note for track 1 that the sequencer track and the drum track operate on 2 different MIDI channels. So for the purposes of this demo, we are going to use track 1 as a drum track. And you can see when we select drum track, we have these first 24 notes to use as our different kit pieces. Because we're on our drum track now, you want to go back into Logic and take instrument 1 and change the MIDI channel from 1 to 10. And that should correspond to the MIDI channels that you set up in the MIDI Control Center. And I am just going to load up Ultrabeat just for the sake of simplicity and load up a Chromeo kit that I like to use. These are all drum samples that I pulled from Splice and put into Ultrabeat. And then you may notice that nothing's happening. So I found that you got to go back into your track menu, go over to Transpose and set this to +36. Now the other way you can set this up is go back into the MIDI Control Center app, scroll all the way down to this section where you see Drum Map. And you want to go down here to this section that says low note, and you want to set that to 36. Both of these methods are effectively doing the same thing. It just depends on what gear or what plugin you're using. And then you should find that everything's working normally. And then you can start to edit in your drums into your sequencer. and everything should be working perfectly fine. The reason why you got to do the whole transpose thing is because the KeyStep Pro automatically takes your 24 drum notes and it sets them down, I think 2 octaves. So you have to line up the drum samples that you're triggering in your DAW with where the kit pieces are on the KeyStep Pro. Maybe this isn't the right way to do this, so if you've figured out a better workaround, definitely let me know, but this transpose thing has worked fine for me. All right, so our next 3 sequencer tracks are much less complicated. So pick any sounds that you want. I'm gonna set track 2 to just a retro synth pad kind of sound. Track 3, I will just set to... Track 4, I will just set to a synth bass sound. And then make sure all 4 of your tracks are record enabled, and you should be good to go. If we go to track 1, we got our drums. Track 2, we've got our retro synth sound. Track 3, we've got our little electric piano sound. And then track 4. Now everything is good to go. You can use the KeyStep Pro as a normal sequencer, just triggering software instruments. You could also set a loop up in Logic Pro, press record, and record each of these instruments sequentially and separately. So now let's say you want to start introducing some of your hardware synths into the setup. Let me show you how to do that. So to get these 2 devices connected, you want to run a MIDI cable from the MIDI out on the KeyStep Pro to the MIDI input on the synthesizer. And then you want to run an instrument cable from the output of your synth to the input of your audio interface. And then let's go back into Logic, and we're going to start a new audio track. And you want to set the input of this new audio track to whatever input that your synth is connected to. And then we need to go back into MIDI Control Center real quick. Now this Roland synthesizer is connected to output 1. So I still want to leave track 1 as a drum track, so we need to take one of our 3 sequencer tracks and set that track's output to output 1 so that it can control the synthesizer. So we'll pick track 2, set it to output 1, and then we'll close our window. Now let's go back into Logic. Well, actually, let's delete this synth track that was previously on track 2. And now we will record, enable all of our tracks. And you should notice that on track 2, you now have control of your hardware synth. If we go back to our other tracks, everything should be working and ready to go. Okay, so now for the last setup, we're going to introduce the Drumbrute Impact drum synth. So this will obviously replace our plug-in drum machine that was on channel 1. And then just for some variety, we'll throw in the Micro Freak synth as well. So now, as you can see, I've got 2 audio tracks on 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 are still our software instruments. And then, as you can obviously see, track 1 is triggering the Drumbrute, no problem. And then track 2, triggering the Micro Freak. Track 3, still triggering our keys sound. And track 4 is still our bass. Now the last thing I want to quickly show you how to do is how to save all of this as a template. Very simple to do. Just go to File, Save as Template. We will call this KSP2. So now when we start a new Logic session, you can go down to this section here that says My Templates. You can load up KSP2. And now, as you can see, all 4 of your instruments are set up and ready to go. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up today's quick little video. Again, this is just a setup. The possibilities with a piece of gear like this are really endless, and I'm really just scratching the surface here. So it's really cool to see everything that the KeyStep Pro is capable of. It really is a piece of gear that has many, many applications and has changed my workflow immensely. So I'm excited to go much deeper with this KeyStep Pro and obviously take you guys along for the ride. Definitely check back for demos and more tutorials featuring the KeyStep Pro. But until next time, my name's Patrick. I'll catch you real soon, all right?